That's how betrayal works. It doesn't always arrive with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it sits quietly on your chest, waiting for you to breathe. And when you do, it breaks something soft inside. I still remember the exact moment it happened. I was sitting in the university library, the faint hum of the air conditioner mixing with the tapping of keyboards all around me. I had a cup of coffee beside my laptop, black, slightly burnt, and my glasses were slipping down the bridge of my nose. I was grading papers, half tired, half proud of how far some of my students had come that semester. And then I saw it, my paper. Or rather, our paper. Only the R was missing. It was a newly published article in a reputable academic journal, one I'd been submitting drafts to for months. The title was identical. The research structure was identical. Even the phrasing of my abstract, word for word, was there. Only, it wasn't my name printed beneath it. It was hers. Layla Ahmed. Before I tell you about that moment, that sharp, quiet betrayal, I need to tell you who Layla was. Because I didn't just lose a student that day. I lost something like a daughter. Layla came into my life 2 years earlier, during one of those gray January mornings when the university felt like a ghost town. She was standing outside my office, holding a thin folder against her chest, her scarf a little uneven, her eyes bright and nervous. "Professor," she said softly, "I read your paper on cultural literacy and local narratives. It changed how I see my own writing. Would you consider mentoring me?" Her voice trembled a little, but her conviction didn't. I was used to students asking for help, but not like that. Not with that sincerity. I smiled, motioned her in, and offered her the spare chair. The one that always wobbled just slightly on the left leg. That was the start. Layla was unlike most of my students. Where others aimed for grades, she aimed for meaning. She'd stay after class to debate a theory, email me at midnight about a new angle she'd found, or drop by with coffee just to talk ideas. I saw myself in her, the younger version of me, idealistic, hungry, hopeful. And maybe that's where I made my first mistake. I didn't just teach her. I trusted her. By the end of her first year under my supervision, Layla had become my research assistant. We worked side by side on a paper that meant the world to me. A 3-year study about how marginalized voices reclaim identity through storytelling. It was deeply personal. My late father's oral histories were part of it. So were my mother's letters from when she migrated to this country. Layla knew all of that. She'd listened to every story, read every draft, and even helped organize the interviews. I treated her less like a student and more like a partner. She called me Dr. Mariam at first, but soon it became just Mariam. Sometimes she'd bring me homemade samosas on long work nights. Other times, she'd tease me about how I still use sticky notes instead of phone reminders. "You're the only person I know who can color code emotions," she once joked, pointing to my yellow sticky notes for hopeful thoughts and blue ones for ideas that might break your heart. We laughed a lot. She knew my favorite tea. I knew her favorite authors. And when she told me about her difficult family, a father who dismissed her academic dreams, a mother who worked double shifts, I wanted to protect her, support her, help her build something of her own. So when I told her she'd be listed as a co-author on our next paper, she cried. Actually cried. Tears glistening on her lashes, her hand over her mouth. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know what this means to me." I thought I did. A year later, things began to change, just a little at first. She started coming late to our meetings, missed a few deadlines, became strangely defensive when I asked for her drafts. "Just trust me, Mariam," she'd say with a quick smile. "You'll love what I'm doing with the data." I wanted to believe her. After all, hadn't I once been her greatest believer? But something small, a whisper of intuition, began to bother me. I noticed she'd stopped CCing me on emails with the department. I caught her once printing documents in the lab under a private login, though she used to share everything through our joint drive. When I asked about it, she brushed it off. "Oh, it's just a rough version," she said. "Didn't want to waste your time." I let it go. Because that's what you do when you care. You give people the benefit of the doubt. You convince yourself that doubt itself is unkind. Until the day of the conference. I remember standing in the back of the auditorium, sipping lukewarm tea from a paper cup, as the dean introduced a new presenter. Ms. Layla Ahmed, one of our most promising young researchers, here to share her groundbreaking work on cultural literacy and reclamation of identity. The title flashed on the screen. My title. My heart thudded once, just once, before the numbness began. I watched her walk up to the podium in a navy blazer I'd helped her pick for interviews. She looked confident, radiant, untouchable. And as she spoke, my words, my examples, even my late father's story, the audience nodded, captivated. No one in that room knew that what they were hearing wasn't hers. It was mine. I didn't make a scene. I didn't shout. I simply left the auditorium, sat on a bench outside, and watched the rain blur the world around me. My fingers trembled as I opened my email. I typed a message to her, short, restrained, formal. Layla, we need to talk. Dr. Mariam. Then I sat there for a long time, watching raindrops slide down the windowpane, until I couldn't tell which ones were rain, and which were mine. That was the night I realized something essential about betrayal. It doesn't come from strangers. It comes from people you've opened your heart to. The ones who've seen your softest corners and know exactly where to strike. And yet, part of me didn't want to believe it was intentional. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A misunderstanding, a timing issue, maybe even a miscommunication with the journal. But deep down I already knew. Because when someone steals your work, it's not just theft of ideas. It's the theft of trust. That was just the beginning of what became the hardest year of my professional life. And one of the most painful lessons of my personal one. When I finally confronted her, it wasn't in some dramatic showdown. It was a quiet afternoon. The kind where the sunlight filters through dusty office blinds and everything feels too still, too delicate. She came into my office carrying a latte, like nothing had happened. You wanted to see me? She asked, smiling that easy, confident smile. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit down, Layla. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw the printed paper on my desk, her published article. I'd highlighted paragraphs, sections, entire pages. The fluorescent yellow bled through the thin paper like veins. I didn't say anything for a moment. Just looked at her. And in that silence, I saw something flicker in her eyes, guilt, fear, maybe even regret. But then it was gone, replaced by a defensive calm. Finally, I spoke. I read your paper, I said. It's impressive. Thank you, she said quickly, too quickly. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Though I couldn't help noticing, I continued softly, that it reads a lot like mine. She froze that I could almost hear her heartbeat in the silence. Then she laughed nervously. Oh, that. I meant to tell you, I used some of our research notes, but this was more of an independent adaptation. Adaptation? I repeated, my tone level. Layla, this is my paper. Word for word. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. The clock on the wall ticked once, then again. Did you even ask for permission to submit it? I asked. She looked away. I didn't think I needed to. I mean, I did most of the data work. And you're so busy, I didn't want to burden you. Burden me. I leaned back in my chair. Layla, this wasn't a student essay. It was my life's work. You used my father's story, my analysis, my title, and you submitted it as yours. Her eyes filled with tears, but her chin lifted stubbornly. I worked hard on that project too. You said it yourself. I was like your partner. Partners share credit, I said quietly. They don't erase each other. She looked down, her tears falling silently onto the desk. You don't understand, she whispered. I needed this. My father. He doesn't believe in what I'm doing. He said I'm wasting my time. I just wanted to prove that I could achieve something on my own. I sighed, my anger thinning into something more complicated. A mix of disappointment and sorrow. Layla, I said, you could have achieved anything. I would have helped you. But not like this. Not by taking what isn't yours. She didn't respond. The silence between us stretched long and painful. After a few seconds, she stood. So what now? She asked quietly. Her tone wasn't defiant. It was weary, scared. I stared at her for a moment. Now, I said, we correct this. Together. You'll write to the journal, retract the paper, and acknowledge the mistake. Her face tightened. Do you know what that'll do to me? My name will be ruined. I swallowed. Layla, you already ruined it when you published someone else's work. For the first time, she looked truly small. She nodded stiffly, whispered a thank you that sounded more like defeat, and left my office. When the door closed behind her, I let myself cry, not out of rage, but grief. I had mentored so many students before her, but none had reached that close to my heart. I had believed in her, fought for her funding, defended her work. And somehow, that faith had been twisted into something I couldn't recognize. Days passed. Then weeks. No email came from her. No retraction appeared on the journal's site. When I reached out again, through formal academic channels this time, her inbox bounced back. She'd deactivated her university email. I called the department, and they told me she'd withdrawn her thesis proposal and was taking a break from her studies. I wanted to believe it was guilt that made her leave. But deep down, I feared it was ambition, the kind that ignores conscience. The following months were suffocating. I had to explain to the ethics committee what had happened, prove my authorship, send drafts, timestamps, references, even voice recordings of our research discussions. Each step felt like reopening a wound. Some colleagues were supportive. Others whispered behind my back that maybe I had let her too close, that maybe I'd been careless with my work. Academic betrayal is never just professional. It's personal. It gnaws at your sense of worth, your judgment, your trust in people. And yet, a small part of me still hoped she'd reach out. Apologize. Make it right. But she didn't. 6 months later, her name resurfaced. She had re-enrolled in another university, and the same paper, slightly revised, had been nominated for a Student Innovation Award. I remember sitting in my car outside the faculty building when I read the news on my phone. It felt like déjà vu, the same heartbreak, the same disbelief. Only this time, I wasn't going to sit and watch. I printed every document, every email, every dated draft that proved the work was mine. I contacted the journal editors directly, submitting my claim with evidence. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was truth. Still, the process was humiliating. I had to expose how deeply I'd trusted her, how I'd given her access to everything. My colleagues' faces said what their words didn't. You should have known better. But that's the thing about betrayal. You never see it coming from someone you love. Then one morning, I received an email from the journal. A simple, formal message. After investigation, we have determined that the paper published under Ms. Ahmed's name contains significant portions of previously submitted and copyrighted material by Dr. Mariam Khan. The article will be retracted, and an official notice will be published. I read it 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there, staring at the words. Vindication doesn't always bring relief. Sometimes it just confirms what you already knew. That something pure had been permanently stained. A few weeks later, I received a letter. No return address. Just my name on the envelope, in familiar handwriting. It was from Layla. Inside one page. Folded twice. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to be seen. I thought if I achieved something big, maybe people would finally believe in me. I know I've lost your trust forever, but please believe this. You were the only person who ever believed in me at all. I read it in silence, my throat tight. Then I folded it back and placed it in my drawer. I didn't forgive her that day. Not yet. But something softened, not toward her, but toward myself. Because I realized that her betrayal didn't erase my integrity. It didn't undo my years of work or compassion. It only revealed what kind of teacher I truly was. One who still believed in the power of second chances, even when none were deserved. When the retraction notice went public, the academic world didn't explode, it whispered. Whispers are quieter than headlines, but they cut deeper. People shared the article link with cautious sympathy. Some sent me polite messages. I'm sorry this happened to you, Dr. Mariam. How terrible. Others were less kind. Perhaps you were too trusting, boundaries, you know? That word, boundaries, haunted me. It made me feel like I was being punished for kindness. Layla's reputation fell quickly. Her award nomination was revoked. The university she'd transferred to suspended her pending investigation. And though part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, I didn't. Instead, I felt an ache I couldn't name, something between grief and guilt, because I hadn't wanted to destroy her. I'd only wanted the truth to stand. Still, the damage was done. Her name became synonymous with plagiarism, and mine became the cautionary tale of the professor who trusted too much. It was around that time I started receiving late-night emails from other students. One read, "Dr. Merriam, I'm sorry about what happened with your research. You once told me never to stop writing about my community. I wanted you to know I'm still doing it." Another said, "You probably don't remember me, but your lecture 3 years ago made me apply for grad school. Please don't let this one betrayal stop you from teaching." Those messages kept me going when my confidence was at its lowest. Because after everything, I started doubting myself as a teacher. Had I blurred the line between mentorship and friendship? Had I given too much, too freely? For months, I withdrew, taught my classes quietly, went home early, avoided the faculty lounge. My office used to be filled with laughter and student chatter. Now it was just the sound of my own pen scratching against paper, and the faint hum of my computer fan. But life as it does kept moving. New students came. New ideas formed. And slowly, a new version of me began to emerge. One who was wiser, slower to trust, but no less kind. Then one morning, about a year later, I received a message that pulled me back into the past. It was from a colleague at another university. "Dr. Merriam, I thought you should know. Layla has been accepted into a writing fellowship overseas. She's apparently starting over. They asked me for a reference since she mentioned working under you. Should I respond?" I read the email 3 times, feeling that old mix of anger and sadness stir again. Part of me wanted to tell my colleague the whole story, to warn them, to protect others from the hurt I'd endured. But another part of me hesitated. Wasn't this her chance to rebuild? And hadn't I once promised myself not to let bitterness dictate who I became? I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sat at my desk, looking at the photo on the wall. My father, sitting cross-legged, holding the tape recorder we used to capture his stories. His eyes seemed to ask me what I'd learned through all this. Finally, I wrote back. Yes, she was my student. She made serious mistakes, which she has paid for. But she's intelligent and passionate about storytelling. If she truly wants to begin again, I believe in second chances. I hit send. Then I exhaled, long and slow. A few months later, a letter arrived at the university addressed to me. The envelope was postmarked from abroad. The handwriting, careful, uncertain, was hers again. Dear Merriam, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm trying to become the kind of person you believed I could be. I'm working with a small community group here, teaching kids how to tell their stories. Every time I see their eyes light up when they speak, I remember your office, your sticky notes, and your yellow tag that said hopeful thoughts. You taught me that words matter. I'm finally learning what that really means. Thank you for everything, even for holding me accountable. Layla. I sat quietly after reading it, my eyes stinging. Not because the pain was gone. It wasn't, but because something inside me finally loosened. Closure doesn't always come with apologies. Sometimes it comes with understanding. I folded the letter gently and placed it beside the first one she'd sent. The one that said I just wanted to be seen. Together, they felt like bookends to a long, painful chapter of my life. But the world has a strange way of reminding you why you started in the first place. A few months later, I was invited to speak at an international education conference, to share my research journey and insights about ethics in mentorship. I hesitated at first, worried it would dredge up old wounds. But then I realized, maybe my story wasn't just a cautionary tale. Maybe it could be a lesson in grace. On the day of the talk, I stood before hundreds of educators, my notes trembling slightly in my hand. I began not with academic jargon, but with truth. I once had a student I loved like family, I said softly. She betrayed my trust. But what I learned from that experience changed how I teach, how I lead, and how I forgive. As I spoke, I saw nods, tears, recognition. I realized then that betrayal isn't just personal, it's universal. We've all trusted someone who broke us. We've all wondered if being kind was a mistake. I ended my speech with a line I hadn't planned. The greatest revenge isn't punishment. It's persistence. Continuing to do good even after good has been stolen from you. The audience rose in applause. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace. After the conference, a young woman approached me, clutching a notebook. Her hands were shaking. "Dr. Merriam," she said, "I'm working on my thesis, but my advisor doesn't believe in my topic. I was about to give up, until I heard you speak." I smiled her. Truly smiled. "Then don't give up," I said. "The world needs your voice. Just remember, protect your work, but don't harden your heart." She nodded, tears in her eyes. And in that moment, I saw something familiar. The spark I once saw in Layla. Only this time, I knew how to guide it with wisdom instead of blind trust. That day, when I walked out of the auditorium, the sun felt a little warmer. I realized forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about reclaiming your story, the one that was almost taken from you. It's been 4 years since that chapter closed. Sometimes when I pass by the old research room, the one where Layla and I spent endless nights sorting data and debating theory, I still feel a tug in my chest. A mix of nostalgia and ache. The walls remember our laughter as much as they remember the silence that followed. But now that memory doesn't sting the way it used to. It's softened, like paper that's been folded and unfolded too many times. I still keep her letters. Not as reminders of pain, but as proof of growth. Mine and hers. The first one sits folded in a plain envelope. Desperate, defensive, heavy with guilt. The second, mailed from across the world, carries something else. Humility. Redemption. They're not apologies carved in perfect words. They're human attempts at making peace with imperfection. And maybe that's what life really is. A series of imperfect apologies and the courage to forgive anyway. Last semester, I introduced a new module in my class. Ethics and empathy in research. I tell my students that good research isn't just about discovery, it's about integrity. About how you treat the people who help you along the way. About the invisible bonds that tie teacher and student, mentor and mentee, heart to heart. One afternoon, after class, a quiet boy lingered by my desk. "Dr. Merriam," he said, "what if you make a mistake that you can't undo?" I looked at him for a long moment and said softly, "Then you start where you are. You do better next time. You let the lesson change you instead of destroy you." He nodded slowly, and I realized, in some small way, I was still teaching Layla too. I no longer fear trusting people. I've simply learned how to trust, with open eyes, clear boundaries, and a steady heart. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't mean you were foolish. It means you were brave enough to love, to mentor, to believe. And though Layla stole my research, she didn't steal my purpose. If anything, she reminded me why my work matters. Because stories like people can be reclaimed. And when they are, they become even stronger. Sometimes late at night, I sit by my window with a cup of tea, the same black, slightly burnt kind I used to drink in that library the day everything fell apart. Outside, the campus glows with soft golden light. Students rush past in laughter, their futures unwritten. I think about the young woman I once mentored, and I hope she's found peace. Not through stolen recognition, but through honest work. Maybe one day she'll tell her own story, truthfully this time, and it will help someone else heal. And me? I'm still here, still writing, still teaching. Still believing that even when trust is broken, compassion can survive the wreckage. Because forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the quiet strength that lets you walk forward with open hands, not clenched fists. That's my story. It began with pride, turned into heartbreak, and ended with grace. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You can't control who betrays you, but you can decide what kind of person you'll be after the betrayal. Will you close yourself off, or will you stay open to the possibility of goodness? Even after being hurt? I chose the latter. And in doing so, I reclaimed not just my research, but my faith in humanity. Soft reflective music tone. Sometimes, the people we lift are the ones who drop us the hardest. But even then, even when the fall bruises your soul, it's better to have lifted someone than to never have cared at all. Would you have forgiven her? Tell me in the comments below. And if my story touched your heart, Don't forget to subscribe for more true stories from voices like mine. Because healing begins when stories are told. And every story, no matter how painful, has the power to make us whole again.